I like that we just had a story about the angels of delusion, and now we have a story about an angel while we're having delusions. Chapter 3 of our adventures in New Eridu are right around the corner. And with it comes a brand new cast of characters to learn about, systems to understand, and a lot of history to uncover. And with our proxy siblings finally tapping into their true potential, things are really starting to heat up. Gone are the days where we lived in blissful ignorance running errands as undercover proxies, because in truth, we were being watched and nurtured from the shadows from day one. Because in truth, everyone knows we're Phaethon, and it was a secret only we thought was hidden. Which forces us to rethink everything we know about the lives of Wise and Belle. And even though the story of patch 2.8 was short, so much was packed into these 2.5 hours that we have just got to talk about it. Because we have just gotten some crucial details of what Wise and Belle really are as the final legacy of Helios Academy. So without further ado, this is the true identity of Phaethon revealed. But first, I will be doing my second ever Zenless Zone Zero live stream on this coming Tuesday, where I will be getting judged and probably roasted by none other than the Kage of New Eridu, Kete the Seventh himself. So stay tuned for that. Also, the number that shall not be named is getting uncomfortably close, and the Discord linked in the description might have something to do about it. But on to the video. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is simple. I'm going to go over the events of the 2.8 story and expound on some important details that make this all more understandable. Good, good. Alright, so we begin our story right after the events of 2.7. Remiel has stolen the W engine, the Hollow Champions competition is postponed, and the big bad wolf Mule is in custody, leaving our proxies with nothing to do with their condition still worsening. And this is shown through a sudden bout of drowsiness and their visions continuing to take a toll on them, which is different from the miasma memory visions that we had after defeating Isolde and Sarah, because the other people could see those. These visions are exclusive to our chosen proxy and don't even seem to be real. But anyway, Sissia is at the door and she announces that she's been given extended time off to accompany us on our investigations into Remiel. Something she doesn't seem to understand isn't leave at all, but instead a special mission. But anyway, we continue by employing the aid of Fairy to track down a certain pink-haired baddie, while nearly giving away Fairy's name twice. So Fairy pulls up the 3 pink-haired girls that we are familiar with, giving priority to the ones whom we've met before. But that doesn't work out, so we narrow down the search by saying this.
Pink hair, but no hood. And she has a black ribbon in her hair.
You just describe Nicole again. Just say she's got 2 giant black wings on her back. Whatever. For some reason, the proxy siblings forget Thyrans exist every now and then, and I think that's kind of funny.
Why would a young lady have whiskers?
Luckily enough, Fairy understands the assignment though and finds Elysia, Remiel outside of the tea milk store. But before we make our move to track her down, Billy texts us about his new form that he's hyped to show us, and he'll be meeting us in Lumina Square as well. And with that, the chase is on. So we meet up with Billy and he continues to hype up his new form, calling it and we begin our wild goose chase to track down Remiel as she toured Lumina Square. She picked up tea milk, a souvenir, tried to see a movie, and then picked up flowers before heading to Blazewood, finally ending up at the Kaz Memorial. But to sum up some things we learned about our W engine thief is that she clearly isn't from New Eridu, because she didn't know any of the drink names like Nitro Fuel. She is very old since she wanted to see a movie depicting old Eridu instead of New Eridu, and she bought flowers to mourn the fall of the old capital. The only problem being that white wither blooms are no longer used for mourning. So she is over 100 years old and she clearly isn't from here. Details that will be very important later on. So after the movie theater, receptionist calls out the MC proxy for being a harem protagonist.
Feels like a clue that wasn't meant to be found.
We arrive at Blazewood, where the Sons of Caledon inform us that Tops has been on the move. More on that later as well. But apparently Remiel happened to find Bernice drink some nitro fuel with her and asked her for directions to the nearest hollow. So we follow the trail into the hollow and Billy goes full Kamen Rider, and Eos does too, until we come across our first taste of Tops' new tech. An army of mass-produced mechs based off of Remule, all run by yokai. who hacks Billy with the dumbest Trojan virus imaginable and proceeds to walk us down. Until Promia shows up and cleans house like the sweeper she used to be, and Yokai retreats. Which I believe is all part of the plan, of course, because remember, Lead Scepter is using Yokai to aid us, the proxies, in our growth.
Well done, Yokai. Now our plan can move forward. Make full use of the final legacy of Helios Academy.
So staging this attack for Promia to lend us her aid was the perfect setup that I don't think Promia was even in on. So Yokai isn't going to do any lasting damage because his job isn't to be hostile. He's mean, but his job isn't to cause us harm. And in this case, his antagonistic actions gave us a strong ally, and I don't believe in coincidences. But going back to the story, this Rusty Cliff underling gets mean mugged by Promia, and we continue our search for Remiel, who left us clues by leaving frozen ethereals in her wake, leading up to a fissure that takes us to the Chasm Memorial where Remiel placed her wither blooms. And little did we know, she was still there, because she watched us from a nearby cliff speaking to an unknown cohort. So we return to Blazewood and get our confirmation that Promia had no intentions of hurting Cecilia from the start, and her trauma was due to an understandable misunderstanding. A dark, brooding, quiet assassin trying to comfort a weak, starving girl who just survived a beating isn't a good combo. But on a positive note, we also get a great bros moment with Lighter and Billy, where we get more details on how much of a menace Billy was, and that he's probably still holding back now, and that he wants to bury that history with a new legacy of inspiring hope. A sentiment that Lighter very much respects, and they rock their red scarves together. And with that, we retire for the night, only to have a vision-induced nightmare and almost run into the middle of the street and get hit by a car. Remiel saves us from being isekai'd by Truck-kun and reveals that she is the first generation Void Hunter, Colonel Dan? I thought the big guy was Dan, and the purple-haired lady was Vike. Oh well, names aside, can you believe that there were people who didn't believe that these two were the same person? Well, I guess our friends can't believe it either, because as she turns to leave, Cecilia Snake Chalky somehow managed to get a tracking device on her. Something she definitely wouldn't have bothered trying if she believed that Remiel was a Void Hunter. Truly, fortune favors the bold. But Promia confirms Remiel's identity as Colonel Dan, sending Cecilia into a mental breakdown, and she also reveals that Tops's activity is aimed at containing her, and that an anti-Void Hunter weapon was meant to take her down. So we follow her into the Hollow, where the tracking device goes dark, and she warns us not to go any further. But we do, guided by our increasingly frequent visions. We run into a white box and an anti-Void Hunter mech. And this is the biggest fraud of a machine we have ever seen. Honestly, I expected better from Tops. They talked such a big game in the 3 Packs trailer about Void Hunters being lambs offering themselves up to the slaughter.
Void Hunters? They're just lambs who were fooled onto the altar.
And if this is the best they got, that is a funny joke. Kind of reminds me of how Miyabi was so unstoppable that not even ice resistance was able to stop her. Good times. But anyway, here is where things get spicy. Because the proxy is, for some reason, drawn towards this white box and touches it, causing them to absolutely tweak out and fuse with the fallen mech. But after our friends defeat that, we turn into Helios. Seriously, these two look way too similar. And we absolutely demolished our poor friends until Remiel shows up to save the day, giving us this beautiful artwork of her true angelic form, and explaining that our transformation was set off by her Void Hunter weapon named Thaumiel, and that we need to go to Roscalifer to see a doctor who can remedy our situation. And with that, she leaves and returns our Porceloid W engine to us, and taking her Void Hunter weapon with her. And shortly after we wake up, our 2 Marcel group representatives appear right on cue, telling us to prepare for our trip to Roscalifer. And just before the credits roll for this chapter, Promia gets orders to follow us to the island in the sky. And that concludes the story, but not my thoughts on what just happened. Because what we just got confirmation of is that Helios Academy was making perfect sacrifices, or something similar. Because remember that thing we fought with Coleta in the Bellabog Heavy Industries all those patches ago back in 1.0? The same way it got out of its mech, Helios got out too. And then after tweaking out and running at us for a little bit, it managed to fuse with the other construction vehicles. And that was later confirmed to be a sacrifice. And now we see this again with the proxies, because something about the way the proxy's body reacted to Thaumiel triggered them to turn into a sacrifice.
Now that the Creator is back, their messengers will fight to the death to reclaim the authority that was stolen.
Remember, the Void Hunter weapons are from the Exaltists, because this is the same thing that the sacrifices tend to do. They pull objects around themselves and transform into a monster. Not to mention the fact that this was all teased back in 1.0 again, when the first sacrifice looked at Eos and it caused the proxy's ocular implants to glitch out. Then it proceeded to absorb the machines just like Helios did. The ability to draw in machines is a telltale sign of Helios Academy's work, because Seed also has this ability. She can control, disable, and detonate machines with nothing but her mind. And she is one of our kind. She is the same thing that we are. A perfected sacrifice, just probably a different type of one. A human being who can exist inside or outside of a hollow indefinitely. The very blessing that the Exaltists wanted. Remember, Seed stayed in a hollow for a month and had absolutely no signs of corruption. This has the Exaltists and Helios Academy written all over it. So it's no wonder why we saw Carol Arna working with the Exaltists in that one vision. The proof is in the projects they worked on. And we the Proxies are the final legacy of this twisted human experiment. And whether they succeeded or failed is entirely decided by what we become. If Phaethon and Icarus was a tale of hubris, we are the product of that hubris. Do we doom the world like Phaethon, or do we deny our fate and become something more? Throwing away that name and making a new one just like we did in 1.0 at the very start of the game. Only time will tell, because this is the true identity of Phaethon revealed. I have just got to talk about this game more. I can't believe it's been a month since my last Zenless video, but mark my words, you guys will be getting more Zenless stuff from me. I love this game, I love the community, and I love to figure out what Hoyo is cooking. And season 3 is looking juicy. A lot of groundwork has been laid, and now it looks like Zenless has entered the chaos phase of storytelling. I told you guys before that when Hoyo drops the Elysia type of character, things are going to get really unforgettable really quick. I tried to warn the Star Rail players, and now they're traumatized. And you guys are next. Peak is right around the corner because Sunbringer aka Kiana is here too. What do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, y'all.